three things, you're just kind of winging it out there. You know, because you'll go in there and you'll be like, well, I did the job and I talked about the product, and how many guys have had people like, yeah, they liked it, they just gave me like the TIO. We've all had TIOs, right? Right. I guarantee a lot of that time was because they didn't know you, or they didn't trust you, or they didn't really know ADT and what we were about, and they didn't trust it. Okay? And so we all know, for the most part, instead of some of the new guys, like we all know how to build value. We know the features and benefits of everything. We just need to know how to, the main thing is going to be getting them to like you and trust you, which we'll go over here today. And then, like I said, the company, it's already nice, like we're with ADT. The confidence that you have in ADT and what we're doing is going to keep that at least an 8 or bring it up to a 10. Caleb?
How do you build value in yourself if you're dealing with like a sheep who's not giving you much to work with?
Sheep, yeah. And so I find sheeps easy to sell, honestly.
Well, how do you build value in yourself? Because they're easy to sell. Because I mean, when you assume the sale, a lot of times they'll kind of just go with it.
But it's not saying sketchy.
But if you're getting like a TIO from the sheep, like because it's a one leg or whatever, or not even that. Like let's just say they're both there. But I mean, they're not saying anything, so you kind of go through everything.
Yeah. Well, those are the hard ones. Those are the sales that sometimes you get where it's like they didn't give you anything. You walk away like, did they really want that system, or was I just a good salesman or something? And so, I think you do have to try everything. I've definitely been in sales that were like, they weren't giving me anything. I wasn't sure if they liked me. They kind of like halfway smiled every once in a while, but then they would like sheepishly like ball up. And so, I will consciously try to sit down and be like, I've already talked about the product. Before I drop price, I want to make sure they like me. And so I want to make sure that at the very least that they know who I am. And so I'll ask them, yeah, how long have you been here? Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, I've been here for like 3 months. But originally, I'm from Joplin, Missouri. That's where I'm born. Have you guys ever been to Joplin? I just want them to know who I am. I want them to know that I'm a human being and that they can trust me.
So you tell them about yourself?
Yeah, tell them about myself. I mean, if they let me inside their house, the sheeps will literally let you inside the house, you know, as long as you're powering through. They're interested, but yeah, just to tell them about yourself. You're a human being, you're not sketchy.
Something that I'll do, especially if it's like older people, like talk about their kids, their grandkids. Old people love talking about their family.
Yep.
So, and then they'll like go on a roll, like, oh really, your daughter? Oh my gosh, and then you're just like, wow, that's crazy. And they'll just keep going. And then, especially like if you're in the house and you're like, wow, you guys have such a beautiful family, like that kind of stuff. And then like just make yourself more of like a human.
The main point of this is like when you get inside those sales to realize where you're at. If you're not thinking about how that customer is perceiving you at the moment, you're literally winging it.
Yep.
You'll get out of a lot of those deals and be like, I don't know what the heck just happened, but you know, they liked it, they just gave me a TIO. And so the main thing is like when you're in those deals, read the customer's body expressions. Like, are they smiling? Do they have open body language? Are they letting you close to them? Because if they're not, then it's like they probably don't trust you. Make a conscious effort to be like, oh, hey, yeah. Anyways, like, yeah, I'm Lamont. I like to smile. Like I said, I'm huge as shit, and so I have to like try to make, like Jackson's got the goofy step thing. I was like, yeah, you have anywhere I can sit down here real quick? I'm like, oh, man. Yeah, no, it's hot as mess outside, man. Yeah, honestly, I'm just super tired. I'll just make myself seem like a regular person. Yeah, comment on the photos that you see inside the house. Talk about like your friends, talk about your family, because once they trust you, that bar starts going up. Okay, and so that's one aspect of it. The other aspect to get that bar to go up is your confidence in what the hell you're doing. In the first 4 seconds you get on that door, they need to perceive you as being sharp and an expert in what you're doing.
I need push-ups, Mom. That's 100 at least. I'm way too late.
I think that's 200.
No pizza? Push-up. 30 minutes
No
late?
pizza.
That's 200. It
So,
has to be 200.
What now?
so when you get to the door, those first 4 seconds that you're talking to that person and when you introduce yourself, they're already judging you. They're already deciding if this guy knows what the hell he's talking about. Can I trust this guy? Is he who he says he is? And so, and we all know this. First impressions are the most important thing. What are some things that you feel like you do personally that gets that customer to trust you?
Like, I mean, you told me this the other day, but I didn't realize I was doing it for the longest time. But eye contact is huge. Like, that's why I don't wear hats. Well, do you ever see a lot of, well, Mike wears hats, but A lot of our top guys don't wear hats, and a lot of it's just because they can see your eyes and what you're looking at. Because we're super darty and not looking at anybody ever, but as soon as you walk up, shake their hand, and you're looking at them in their face, you're like, hey, my name's Zach. How we doing? You know? But trust.
If you do wear a hat, like whenever someone opens the door, I don't know if it's just like a nervous thing, but I always like take my hat off. Whenever like someone opens the door, I just like take my hat off and start talking to them.
Yeah, that's like a body language thing to be like, hey, like I'm not hiding anything, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. This is who I am. And so that first 4 seconds, if you come to the door and you're kind of like just like smacking gum, you're like digging in your nose, or you just look super like sloppy, they're gonna immediately judge you. And that's why it's also super important that for the rookies coming out here, you become proficient about the product that we're selling and what we're doing, because that's gonna build confidence in what you're doing. Because a lot of the times you get out there and you're super nervous and you're like jittering on the doors and you're like, oh, well, the product could be good. And like maybe you are a good guy and they obviously know ADT, but they're not going to buy because you're just not an expert. Okay, and so getting proficient, getting confident in what it is that we do, which is going to segue into me what I really actually wanted to train on today, was testimonies. We've sold how many accounts so far this summer?
A lot.
Like almost 1,000.
It's a lot.
I think it's 800.
About 2,000.
Over 900 sales, we're like getting close to 900 installs.
So yeah, that's amazing. That's insane. And we're only getting halfway into the year right now.
That's
And,
money, dude. That's a lot.
Testimonies.
Hey,
I
let me
think
see this highlight.
what's going to be super important for us to build that confidence on the doors is to have confidence in what it is that we're selling and what it is that we're offering. And so we've set up like 800, 900 accounts this year. We've all set up people that we brought something into their life that's completely changed their life in ways that we may not know. And so I just set up this dude the other day. He's like 70, 80 years old. And crazy story. You know, like old people, they fall, right? And so this guy doesn't live with anybody. He was down and he was down for 4 days inside of his own house.
4 days?
4 days. 96 hours. Pissed, shit himself. Lost like 30, 40 pounds. Eventually his son came by to check on him and immediately rushed him to the ER. He had to be in there for a couple months. And so that's his second time falling. The first time falling, he fell in his shop, which is like this metal shop. And it's like a hot box inside those metal shops. Was down for like a day and a half. And then thankfully one day, one of his neighbors came walking and heard him groaning in there. I was like, is someone over there? And so I didn't find that out at the beginning of the sell. I'm talking to this guy about cameras to watch his dope Corvette and like his shop in the back. But because I asked the right questions, I figured out like 4 days. Like, are you serious? Like, I'm claustrophobic. I can't even be on the ground for like an hour. You know, I freaked the fetch out for like 4 whole days. And so the medical attendant. Like, the next time he falls could be the last time. And so it's funny because after that deal that I got, that was, I think it was like last Saturday, like every sale that I've gotten this week has been medical attendant. Because I feel so emotionally charged about that now. Like, if it's an elderly person and their health isn't great, like, I'm not leaving this house until you take this medical attendant. Like, I can't leave on a good conscience knowing that that could be an issue and I have something here that can help you. And the dope part about that is that translates, they can feel that. They can feel how serious I am about it. It's not like, oh, hey, cool, we've got this medical pendant. Yeah, it's, you click it, it'll call the police. You know, like regular feature pendant. It's like, no, hey, I just helped somebody out last week. I was down for 4 days. Like, can any of you guys imagine being down for that long?
No. And we don't have to have that experience to use that story.
Right.
Hey, this summer, one of your neighbors, we actually gave them this medical pendant because they were in their house on the ground for 4 days.
Yep.
They got sent, like, we're all in the same areas, right? So you guys can use that story. Hey, we set up a customer, this is why they got it. And that emotion of that story is gonna sell a lot. And the thing is, he didn't tell you right off the bat that he was in his house for 4 days, right? How many of those stories are happening to people, but we miss it because we're just blitzkrieg pitching them? We didn't stop to ask the questions and get them comfortable with us. If they bring their guard down and you do what Lamont said, you take the first 2-3 minutes to ask them some questions. Hey, how do you like the neighborhood? How long you been here? Yada, yada, yada. You share something about yourself. Hey, I'm from Joplin. Now you're a human. Now that guy was comfortable to tell Lamont that story because it's probably like traumatizing.
Yeah.
So for most people, you're not just going to go out and like, oh, ADT, yeah, I was on in the ground for 4 days. I've been looking at something like this. You're not going to get that unless you talk to the person and personalize it.
You gotta make the conversation brief.
Yep.
And like the biggest thing I think for a lot of us is we have to listen. And so listening comes when you're confident and you know what the next step in the sale is. When you guys are trying to blitz through it, like I've heard rookie pitches and they've been like, oh yeah, we've been looking at an emergency pen. Like, anyway, the cameras, which you really like, and they just like keep going. It's like, just slow down, be confident, you know where you're going, keep training until you get confident, and then listen. Like, they will tell you. They'll be like, oh yeah, my truck. Anyway, yeah, this doorbell camera for your packages. Like, I hear it all the time. It's like, slow down, listen. Look, use your eyes.
That's right, and ask good questions. Questions are everything. Literally would not have known that. I was actually at the end of the sale. I was already going to sell the guy, but how much more did he enjoy the system now that we got him another pin? I was literally at the end of the sale.
Did you have the EP included? Did you have the EP in there already when you closed him and were signing him up?
No, I was literally signing him up with cameras and
Really?
And
then he asked you?
with cameras, which was funny because he didn't even. I came up there and I was like, hey, yeah, we're paying. I was like, hey, be super low key about this. Like, don't tell any of the neighbors, but we're just gonna pay for a couple cameras out here. He's like, oh man, I'm not super tech savvy. And I'm like, hey, yeah, no worries. I just talked to him a little bit. I noticed he pulled out his smartphone. I was paying attention. He was just using that thing like he was super familiar with it. I'm like, oh, this dude wants cameras. You know, like he can use cameras. And so I ended up asking him, like, hey, like you have a dope Corvette out here. He had one of those old, old model, like box cars inside of a shed in the back, and he had just gotten broken in, like literally a week ago. I didn't find that out until I asked him questions about it. And so once I did, it was like, bing, 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 just asking those questions. I ended up finding value, sold the system. And so I wanted to open up to the floor to a couple of you guys. I mean, literally anyone in here. Like, we sold 800, 900 accounts. It'd be dope if we all do have stories of someone that you sold that was like, wow, they were really happy for this. You know, they were thanking you at the end of it. Now you guys can use that story that I had as ammunition, but like, what are some dope stories that you guys have? Caleb, real quick.
Well, I had a question, but I'll tell you a good story. I think Mike already told it before, but I I went and knocked on this dude's house. He was like, oh, I got a shop too. He was like, can I get that set up too? And I'm like, yeah. So they were both scheduled for the next day to get set up. So they went and set up his house the next morning at like 10 in the morning. And then they finished the shop. They went over to his house to install the house. And then while they're installing the house right after the shop got broken into. Like, not even an hour after the shop was installed with the system. They caught the whole thing. Alarm set off, they left.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of shop was it?
I don't even remember really. It was my first year.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it was like a car shop.
Not my story, but one of Dan's stories. Smoke detector is smoke and heat. So if there's a fire in the attic, obviously smoke rises. So it was heat detected. Like, little girl in a room, headphones on, like playing a game. Like, fire department came to the house, like kicked down the door. Wow. Like, smoke detector was going off. Not how people will be sitting inside their house. The attics will literally cave in, like there's a fire going on.
Yeah, that's like.
So heat detection if there's a fire in the attic.
The system is like, we have a lot of cool equipment, but like it only really matters when it comes to the things that matter the most, which is family, which is the people in our lives. And so like, yeah, you've got a little girl inside the house. Like, I've got a niece 7 years old. Like, I couldn't imagine a fire facilitated in on her. But like, thankfully that smoke detector was there. So like, now that's a story that is like, oh, you've got children, and it's an older house here. Like, we're definitely going to give you this.
I use that line every house, especially in the older houses. Yeah, do you know the last time your house was rewired? How many TVs do you have plugged in? How many electronics do you have in the house? That's overworking your system. They're like,
When we went
a lot of these
shopping,
older homes have house fires. That's why we did the smoke detector.
when we went house shopping, like it was interesting. Like, I think it was the first house we looked at. We went up in the attic and there was like fire damage in there, but the house looked totally fine. And so I would say like a large amount. I don't know the exact statistic, but if the house has been there 100 years, there's probably been a close call, or there has been a fire in the house and they've just repaired the damage. And so, like, that's something, yeah, like you got to ask your customers about. Like, sometimes they had a house fire when they were a kid. So, like, they live in California, they know fires are bad, and you never know that until like you find out. Like, I had a lady, and I just pressed, and we were finishing up the sale. Same thing, we were closing the sale, doing the cameras, and she hated ADT. Felt like she got scammed by ADT, but I ended up building the reputation of the company and myself, and got it. And then we're finishing up, and she's like, "Oh yeah, how much would it be to add extra smoke detectors?" I'm like, "How many?" She's like, "Well, I want 4 total." I'm like, "Okay." So talk. Yeah, and she was like, that was her hot button, and I had glossed over it. I had given her 2 because I knew it was important to her. She's like, oh, those are really cool. I was like, yeah, cool. I'll give you 2 because I normally do 1 or none.
Yeah,
So I was like 2. I was like,
Why?
man, I'm going like way overboard here. But I took the time, listened. She's like, well, how much for extra? I'm like, oh, pause. Don't give her an amount. I'm like, why? Like, where do you want them? What's the main reason? And she's like, yeah, like fire this, burning down, and like she was kind of like intense about it, you know.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you brought it up at first, you know, the smoke detectors, she was probably like, oh, really?
Eyebrows raised.
Eyebrows
She's like,
raised.
that's nice.
Yeah, super subtle moment. And when we can catch those moments, and we can be like, oh, like there's something, there's an emotion underlying that. Yeah, why? Like, yeah, how do you feel like this would benefit you guys? Yeah, because if anyone's ever had a fire inside the house, I've had a few people I set up last year that was like, knocked on the door, they just moved into the house because their last house just caught on fire. And like the devastation of that.
On second sale, literally they moved from their house like 10 miles away because their whole entire house burned down.
It's the value you get for $70 a month to prevent your house being burnt down again is immeasurable. And so like that's an emotionally tangible thing that we can all feel because we know it's happened to people. We know it's happening to people. Saying a house fire happens every 84 seconds.
We got 2 in our house. We have 2 smoke detectors.
And so,
It's a small house.
I remember this old man I set up, Mr. Morgan. He had a break-in earlier in his life, and he was so paranoid about being broken into again. He actually barricaded his back door, and there were only 2 doors in, so he literally just had a front door. So when I gave him door sensors, I literally had to put a sensor on the air conditioner so that I knew like had minimum zones of security. Anyway, but he initially was like, yeah, on the box, you know, because people can go in through that too. Yeah, it sounds terrible.
Going in 4K, Cooper.
Yeah, and but he told me at first like he really doesn't need cameras. He's not interested. But this man obviously like pushed through and like he super duper did need cameras and super duper did need an alarm system because he literally was living in fear. Like that's not normal, dude. Like if you have to live with your back door barricaded to feel safe in your home, like we didn't change that for you. So I like to think that he literally was the perfect candidate for an alarm system.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what happened with my
Yeah, kind of a gnarly story. Is over the winter, I remember telling you about it. But over this last off season, I got a buddy of mine who works turnarounds. All the Louisiana guys know what that means, but chases turnarounds all over the country. And he's gone for 60, 90 days at a time, 7 days a week working. I just bought a house. Has this big crazy truck, like 16-inch lift, 28-inch wheels, like huge truck, massive boat in the back, $400,000 boat in the back, all this stuff. And been putting off getting cameras for months and months since he bought this house. And he called me in like February, I think it was. He bought the house in like September. He was like, hey, I'm going on another turnaround. I need you to come to my house, give me cameras this week. Can you make that happen? And I was like, yes. He's like, I've been putting it off for way too long. So I go to his house, sell them, put like 5 cameras around the house, financed it. This was back when finance was a headache. It was insane. And insane. 7 days later, he gets a notification. His girlfriend, it's like 9 o'clock at night, his girlfriend walks out this door to go walk the dog before bed. And he got a notification said, emotion alert on camera, whatever. He thought that was his girlfriend. He thought that was Sophie. And Sophie came back in and said, Hunter, there's a guy outside. He was like, what do you mean there's a guy outside? There's a guy outside. He was like, oh shit. Looks on his phone, sees that there's a guy about to kick in the front door. And then he goes out with a gun. And when he opens up the door, they all take off. There was 4 guys circling this house. And then they ran to the house, or they ran to the car. And he's outside with a gun, and 3 of them are shooting at the house as they're running away, and he's shooting back at them in the front yard. And three of our cameras caught that on video on a Thursday night in Lamonts, Louisiana.
They wasn't coming with a couple wire. They had guns.
Yeah. Who's to say what would happen if he got inside the house and his family were there?
That extra 10, 30 seconds could have saved his life.
Yeah.
Like for real, could have saved his life.
Yeah.
It saved a couple other people's lives too, because they were on a string of. It was a stolen vehicle. They were on a string of. At the time, I was dating a sheriff, and they were on a string of robbing people. So they had robbed like 3 more people that night, and they weren't gonna stop really. So those videos got pretty damn good footage of what went down. So they ended up catching them.
Yeah, it's like we're in a sales job, but we're all here to make money. Like, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't, but I think when you start hearing these stories, and we've all that have sold enough accounts, you know, you probably sent 10 accounts, even 5 accounts, even 1 account, like there was a reason that they bought it, and sometimes we fly through that reason without even knowing it. And then, sometimes
That's how
like
we lose a lot of our sales.
well, we lose a lot. We lose a lot of our sales that way, and sometimes we lose just a lot of information. You know, a lot of the sales I'll get to at the end. Hell yeah, we've actually been thinking about a security system, and I didn't even know the entire time. You know?
Like, why?
Yeah, why?
Why did they tell you?
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you needed this, and so. Like, when you all get sales, I think it's super important, especially when it's like you're the one that set up that person, to ask this person, yeah, why did you get this? You know, like what about this did you really, made you get this today? Why not be like other people that don't care about security? And so you'll just get some of the wildest answers.
Pretty similar to yours, like with the medical pendant. This guy's wife had just passed away, I think, 2 months prior because she had fallen in the house. And the guy, he was gone to work, and his brother was in the house. But his brother was just like, she was on the floor for like 8 hours. Like, his brother didn't know CPR, like, he was just useless pretty much. By the time he found her, she was already gone. Like, she'd had something, I think like a stroke or something other. But yeah, so he was like similar in age. So I gave him a medical pendant.
I mean, like, that makes me want to cry, man.
Yeah, like you never know, people are like, no, I'm fine, my health is fine. Like his wife, same thing, so I thought she was fine.
And people like perceive it as just a salesman trying to sell you a product, but like when it's like, no, like this is what happened with someone we had just set up, or like this is what could have happened. My grandpa, I wish I was doing ADT, a few years ago, he had a big issue with falling, and so he had cancer at the time, and so he'd fall